Hello everyone, welcome back to Bookworm World, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Nihati Rena and today I'm going to be reading one-star reviews of my favorite books. So with no further ado, let's begin. Now the first book on my list is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Before I read the reviews, let me just give you a quick summary. Pippa Fitz-Amobi is a student in a small town called Kilkilton. For her EPQ, which is sort of a school project, she chooses to study a murder case from her town. Everyone thinks a person named Sal Singh did it, but Pippa thinks that he was innocent. She digs deeper, uncovers secret, and the whole thing is like a murder mystery. Now let's go on to the one-star review. It should be on the screen somewhere this side or this side. I'll figure that out during editing. Genuinely asking myself why I read this. This book had it all: bad writing, a completely unrealistic plot, white savior trope, I am not like other girls, and probably the most annoying main character I have ever read about. Are we reading the same book? Anyways, for some reason, this teenager is allowed to start a massive murder investigation where every possible witness tells her everything without her having to work for it. And, of course, she ends up doing what the police couldn't. The whole premise was just so unrealistic and unbelievable that I was annoyed from the very first page. So it seems like you missed the entire point. The thing is, the police could have done what Pip did, like the main character, but they didn't actually put into the work to actually investigating the case. So that's why Pip was able to figure out the whole mystery. The mystery itself was also barely a mystery at all. The pacing was off, things made no sense, and everything was terribly convenient. Pip kept making random decisions and suspect basically everyone until she finally gets the right person. At this point in the books, I was just counting down how many pages I still had to suffer through. I thought the pacing was pretty good. I just love fast paced books. Pip had no personality traits aside from her constant need to save everyone because she was such a good person and better than everyone else, which the reader was reminded of every second page. No, we weren't. I'm not sure you're reading the same book. It's never explained why any of these people talk to Pip and basically tell her their entire life stories, or why she even cares to launch this entire investigation. Did you even read the beginning? And okay. Anyways, the Pip used to be friends with Sal Singh, the person who allegedly killed the victim. So that's why she started the whole case. I think the person who wrote this skimmed over the book. Her character has no development. No, no, this person is so wrong. And at the end of the novel, she's still exactly as annoying as she was on the first page. I wish I hadn't read this. It clearly wasn't for me and a massive waste of time. Okay, one thing in that sentence is correct. It wasn't for you, which is fine. Now, our second review is also from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I made a Goodreads account just so I could give this book 1 star. I mean, dedication. Anyways, the second on our list is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. So before I start, reading the reviews, let me give you a quick summary. 10 strangers are invited to a lonely island. One by one, they start dying in mysterious ways. The killer is among them, but no one knows who. In the end, nobody survives, not even the killer. Now, the 1 star reviews I have prepared are this. I was supposed to care when the people started dying, right? Well, I didn't. Quite frankly, every single character in this book is extremely dull, and not surprisingly, the book overall is a snooze fest. You're calling this book boring? Like 10 people, more than 10 people die in it. What do you mean by boring? I did not care who was murdering them. Clearly, they were being killed for issues in their past that the murderer feels angered by. How dare you cause deaths? I shall kill you in return. Makes sense, sure. It wasn't supposed to make sense. Like the murderer has a false sense of justice. That's the whole point. Anyways, In the very beginning, I was intrigued by Soldier Island, but when everyone comes together, it is glaringly clear that they are all a poor, and this book was not going to improve. Overall, I felt like I was reading the game through. This may make a decent movie, although if I would even sit through that 2 hours is questionable. One may exist, I don't know. I cared so little I never bothered to check. I doubt I will be reading another Agatha Christie novel as this is touted as one of her better ones and I was bored to tears. Maybe you just didn't read murder mysteries, they don't seem like they're for you. The second review is One Little Soldier Boy out of 10. 10 uninteresting British people talk politely about murder for 250 pages. Yeah, but it's like interesting British people. And they're talking sometimes not politely about murder. Anyways, the third book we have on our list is The Wager by, let me see, David Gran. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the author's names, even though I am a writer. So let me give you a quick summary. A British ship wrecks off the coast of South America. The stranded sailors face hunger, storms, and fight for survival. Some turn against each other, leading to mutiny. Later, when they return home, they tell very different stories of what happened. So the one-star reviews I have prepared here is did not finish. A bunch of guys on a ship doing chores. Not even mutiny, cannibalism, shipwreck and betrayal could save me from my boredom while reading this book. He literally listed all of the things that made this book amazing. And then you're telling me you did not finish it. Like, what? It has mutiny, it has cannibalism, it has shipwrecks and betrayal. What more do you need? What more? So, the fourth book is, I feel, a bit more controversial. Some people absolutely love it, and some people absolutely hate it. And I am in the middle somewhere, slightly going towards the people who absolutely love it. Like, I'll slightly like it. And this review is extremely long, so once again, the summary, yeah. In a world where most people have magical powers, Payden, our main character, is powerless but pretends like she has powers to survive. She gets caught up in the purging trials, which are, held every once in a while to show off the power of the people living in the kingdom. She obviously has no powers and has to use her intelligence to survive. Along the way, she discovers, hidden truths and stuff, and that is the Powerless trilogy. And this review, oh my god, damn, it's long. Anyways, this is gonna take a while. I am so disappointed in Lauren Roberts. Like, genuinely, viscerally, soul deep disappointed. Wow, quite dramatic. I just finished the Powerless trilogy, and the only logical conclusion I have come to is that Lauren Roberts is a thief. Not metaphorically, not playfully, I mean a straight up copy paste, no shame thief. She hasn't just borrowed tropes, she's lifted entire plots, world building systems, character arcs, even dialogues from 5 wildly popular fantasy slash dystopian series. And she's parading them around like they're original. Like we haven't read the very story she's plagiarized, just with different names. Let's break it down. Okay, sounds fascinating. Is that the right word? Number one, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Point number one, The Hunger Games versus the Purging Trials. Let's talk about the Purging Trials, a blatant, shameless knockoff of the Hunger Games arena. Teens battling to the death for survival while being broadcasted live for public entertainment. Sound familiar? Which, I mean, this is sort of a trope actually. It's not even like a plot. I mean, the characters are set in dangerous situations where they have to use their brain and powers to survive. It's literally almost every fantasy or dystopia novel ever. Like, let's be honest, they're not that original. Even though Hunger Games is the original one. It's point number two. In Powerless, the trials are broadcasted and participants can win favors from the audience for rewards. Literally sponsorships. You didn't even try to hide it. The second point is also, still a trope, like, winning public flavor, winning public favor with the public, being famous, like, still a trope, but yeah, I feel like it's a bit too close to Hunger Games. Point number 3, the societal divide. Elites versus ordinaries, which is elites are the people with powers and ordinaries like Payden, the main character, are the people without powers. Okay, hi again, capital versus districts. So are you saying any type of two different societies arguing with each other are like copying Hunger Games? Is racism copying Hunger Games now? What the hell is this point even supposed to mean? Point number 4. Payden being good at archery because her dad taught her, a direct Katniss knockoff. Okay, I don't know. Archery is a pretty popular thing in those, like medieval or, dystopian novels because it's not as old or like old fashioned as sword fighting, but still, it makes your main character look cool. I don't know about it being taught by both of their fathers. Maybe it could be a coincidence, but yeah, the coincidences are kind of adding up, but they're still slight. They're still mostly tropes. Point number 5. And oh, the favorite color scene. Like there's a scene between Payden and the love interest of Powerless, which is Sky, when they basically ask each other's favorite color. She copied one of the most tender moments between Peeta and Katniss and slapped it like no one would notice. It was soul crushing when Suzanne did it with green and orange, but Lauren just made a cheap copy. Actually, I can't comment on that. I have never read Hunger Games, so I don't know how similar they really are. Book number 2, The Selection by Kira Kass. Number 1, the name of the kingdom in the selection is Ilia. In Powerless, it's Ilya. I can't even make this up because apparently even changing a single letter is enough to pass it off as different. Okay, I can't argue for this one. Yeah, it's weird. Number 2, the whole love triangle setup. That's a trope, honestly. It's in every fantasy or dystopia book. Point number 3, the rebellious father backstory, just like America's dad in the selection. The main character in selection is named America? What the hell? Point number 4. And of course, the classic I am not like other girls moment where she wears a different colored dress at the royal ball so she stands out. Are we serious? It's like not like that. It's about all the other girls are wearing green to, because it's the color of the kingdom flag. They're following tradition. And Payden is not doing that. She's like, kind of rebelling against the tradition and the kingdom and the king, who she obviously hates. If you've read the book. Book number 3, Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Point number 1, the entire foundation of the world in Powerless is a carbon copy of Red Queen. Society divided by those with powers, elites slash silvers versus those without, ordinary slash reds. Powers equal to privilege, lack thereof equals to oppression. Copy paste. It's also a trope. Is real life racism now copied by Red Queen and Hunger Games? What does this person mean? Point number 2, Payden pretending to have power so she can survive in elite society. That is what's her name? Mayor Barrow's whole plotline. I mean, obviously she'd be dead if she didn't pretend to. Do you want a dead corpse as the main character? Point number 3, resistance movement, underground rebellion also stolen. If there's an evil kingdom, there's gonna be a underground rebellion. Such a famous trope. Point number 4. She even gave Pay silver hair. Come on. A lot of authors want to make the main characters look old as hell. Anyways, point number 5. And the sweet, nurturing best friend slash sister who sews clothes, Adina. I have already seen this exact character already multiple times. I mean, there's always this one character. Okay, kind of spoilers. You might wanna. I'll put a timestamp whenever this section is done. But there's always a very sweet character that obviously the readers are gonna love, and then they die just to make the story more dramatic. Like that's a basic. It's like writing 101. Every writer knows this. Make a character that everyone loves, sweet, kind, whatever. Kill them later on to add drama. Now, in Reckless, which is the second book of the Powerless trilogy, book number 4, Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. Point number 1, captor versus captive turned lovers trope. In Dance of Thieves, Cassie, the female main character, and Jace, the male main character, are enemies who end up chained together, forced to survive side by side, and obviously catch feelings in the process. In Reckless, Payton and Kai are forced together on the run, enemies to lovers, while constantly questioning each other's motives. The same dynamic, the same slow burn trust, the same suspicious angst, even the same vibes. It's a famous trope. Like, who doesn't know enemies to lovers? Like, do you even read books if you don't know this trope? Point number two. Kazi hides who she really is and what she's doing. So does Payton. Jazz hides his plan. So does Kai. I mean, yeah, they're enemies. They probably wouldn't trust each other with their deepest, darkest secrets. Point number three. Male main character similarities. Jace is the leader of a powerful outlaw family ruling a feared territory. In Reckless, Kai is the enforcer. Basically, royalty in the most brutal, fearsome way. Both are boys with titles, knives, and emotional walls. Both are feared, both are wanted, both are soft only for the main girl. That's also, again, a famous trope. Point number four, the desert survival vibe. It's a desert. Like, can we seriously not even use deserts anymore? And finally, in Fearless, book number four, The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Payton finds out she's secretly royalty, just like Oriah. Secret royalty is also pretty much a popular trope, even though I don't like it. Like, why can't they just rule a kingdom because they're competent and capable? Royal blood doesn't mean anything. Point number two. And the final trial ends up with Payton and Kai fighting each other, just like Oriah and Ray, something, being forced to go head to head. Obviously, if you have two main characters who care for each other and you make them fight, it's gonna cause drama. Point number three, the vibes, the dynamic, the whole force to fight the one you love in a death trial. Yup, stolen yet again. It's a trope, god damn. It's not even subtle. It's not inspired by or a nod to. It's blatant, it's lazy, it's disrespectful to the authors who actually built these worlds from scratch. What annoys me more is that Powerless is being hyped up as this original groundbreaking series by people who either haven't read the other books or just don't care that's a collage of plagiarism. Lauren, if you're gonna steal, the least you could do is not get caught. But you did, and we noticed. Alright, I think this person sort of has a point. Powerless, let's be honest, even though I enjoy it, it's not original or groundbreaking or, all of these amazing adjectives. It's nice for an introduction to fantasy. Like, it really got me back into fantasy after a long hiatus. Like, I was in dystopia and romance and other book genres. It got me back into fantasy. It's pretty good. And it's not really a series like that's meant to win the Nobel Prize or whatever prize you get for writing a really good book. It's just, harmless fun. And yeah, it pretty heavily depends on tropes and things, but it's still good fun. And that was the end of this video. Wow, it's pretty long. And tell me if I should do a part 2 of this series or what other videos I should make. Anyways, thank you. Bye. Please subscribe.